I was nothing but a bastard child my biological parents treated as excess garbage from the day I was born. Yet at 18, after a brutal confrontation where I burned every bridge, I walked away with $3 million in cash in a downtown apartment from my wealthy family. Even my own mother sneered that I never should have existed. When I lay in a hospital bed burning with fever for 3 days, not a single person came see me. But I used that payout to raise a little girl I found scavenging half-eaten food from a dumpster, turning her from a thunder-phobic scrap of a creature into a genius founder Redwood University was fighting to recruit. All because in those hungry, desperate eyes, I saw the same hopelessness and longing staring back at me. Back when I was still in elementary school, I had taken a pathetic little girl. I watched her grow up day by day and witnessed firsthand an ugly duckling transform into a beautiful swan. But as the years passed, I slowly came to realize that the affection buried deep in her heart had been growing wildly in an entirely unexpected direction. I vaguely remember the day I brought Olivia home. It was a complete accident. The afternoon sun was beautiful. I was wandering alone through Lincoln Park. It wasn't far from my house near the dumpster by North Pond. I spotted a kid who was nothing but skin and bones, standing on her tiptoes, rummaging through the garbage for God knows what. The kid wore a pair of ancient sandals that were barely holding together. Her clothes were covered in a patchwork of holes. She was so thin, she looked like a stick figure. It seemed like a strong gust of wind could knock her over. After digging around for a bit, she pulled out a half-eaten oatmeal energy bar covered in dirt and was just about to shove it into her mouth. "Hey," I called out, making her freeze. The kid flinched so hard she nearly jumped out of her skin. She spun around and locked her wide eyes on me. Her expression was a mix of panic and utter despair. She held out a finger that was nothing but bone pointing at her gaping mouth, like a little claw wordlessly begging me for something to eat. I couldn't stand it. I have never been able to resist this kind of thing, so I dug a pack of cookies out of my pocket and offered them to her. The kid jerked back and stubbornly refused to take them directly from me. She frantically motioned for me to toss the cookies onto the ground. Instead, once she had devoured every last one of my cookies, she actually began trailing behind me, always keeping a distance of roughly 15 or 20 feet, matching her steps perfectly to mine. I looked back and gave her a dirty look, but she refused to go. Her matted hair covered half her face, leaving only one large, bright eye visible, and that look in her I was startlingly clear, filled with raw desperation and begging. I let out a sigh. That kind of look always got to me. I asked her, "Do you have nowhere to go?" I said. The kid nodded vigorously, then immediately started shaking her head just as hard, leaving me even more bewildered. "So why are you following me?" When she finally spoke, her voice was dry as sandpaper and her lips were chapped and split. After a long pause, she stammered and managed to force out a few words. I can work." I honestly didn't understand what following someone had to do with being able to work, but she probably just wanted to stick to me and find someone who would protect her. I crooked my finger and motioned for her to come closer. "Fine, that's settled then. From now on, you stay with me. I will look after you." The girl hesitated, then gave a small nod. I reached out and took her hand. It was all bones and unbelievably tiny. I did my best to ignore the sour, rank smell coming from her and brought her back to my place in the suburbs. The second we walked through the door, our housekeeper, Maria, shrieked, "Lucas, what in the world did you bring home this time?" I held up the girl's hand for her to see. "She is my new teammate. I found her." The kid caught on quick and brought out her favorite line again. I can work." Setting an extra place at the table was no big deal, so the little thing ended up staying without any fuss. The first thing I did was shove her into the bathroom for a shower. Then I generously found a set of my own clothes for her to put on once she was cleaned up. She looked like a different person from inside. My baggy t-shirt and sweatpants emerged a pale, gaunt little face and arms that were as thin as twigs. Her hair was still long, hiding half her face. Her small hands, crisscrossed with tiny scars, were nervously clutching the edge of her shirt. That one eye, full of desperate pleading, timidly watched me from behind her tangled hair. I scratched my head and then scratched my back. Finally, I decided to go dig up some snacks from the pantry to share with her. The girl wasn't very big, but her appetite sure was at dinner. She went to town on the food. She polished off 2 entire plates of spaghetti on her own and licked the plates clean. Maria just stood there clicking her tongue in surprise. Look at you with those twig arms and legs. You look like a little sprout, but you put away food like a defensive lineman. So, little one, what is your name? Olivia, she mumbled under her breath. Then she paused and added a weird-sounding last name, Honey. I was totally lost, like the panda. Pandy. Maria shot me a quick look, then immediately turned back to the girl, her gaze full of sympathy. Oh, dear. So that is how it is. You poor little thing. You're a girl, are not you? Where is your mother? Mom had a boy. She did not want me anymore. Maria asked her softly and gently coaxed the story out piece by piece. She got the whole story from the girl finally. She dragged me into the bedroom and slammed the door behind us. Lucas, I do not think she is lying. What this child went through is horrible. Should we let her stay? If we do not let her stay, Maria dropped her voice and went on, I could call a social worker. At least they could find her somewhere to go. I was stuck on a completely different issue. She is a girl? But are not girls supposed to be dressed up all nice like princesses? Oh, Lucas, Maria sighed. Most people in this world are just regular, ordinary folks. Hardly anyone actually gets to live like royalty. I nodded, not really getting it, but pretending I did right. Then we noticed the little girl was standing right outside the door. Before I could even open my mouth, she had already dropped her knees with a loud thump, looking like she was about to smash her forehead against the ground. I panicked immediately, my tongue getting all twisted. No, 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 stop that. You do not want me either. She whispered in a raspy voice that sounded like it was breaking. That is not it. It is not about that. We do want you. Get up. I hurried to the door to try and lift her, but her body was stiff as a plank, and she would not budge. Acting on some weird impulse, I dropped to my knees right along with her like I was clumsily returning the favor Maria tried and tried, but could not get either of us to stand up. So she just stood there fretting helplessly, rubbing her hands and mumbling under her breath in Spanish, Oh, God above, what you two doing down there? Later, no matter how hard we tried, we cannot find any official record for this girl. When we went to enroll her in school, we had to give her a brand new name. Olivia was an absolute workhorse. She spent all day fighting to do chores around the house, sweeping, washing clothes, cooking, any housework you could think of. She had to stick her nose in it. She even taught herself how to knit from dawn to dusk. She never stopped. She worked harder than any hired hand if she kept grabbing up chores. At this rate, Maria would eventually be worked right out of her job. So I thought about it. The most sensible solution was to just bring her to school with me. Tuition at that private elementary school was not cheap, but I had my own savings covering her fees. Was no problem at all. I covered everything for her food, clothes, a place to live, whatever I had, I split with her after school. Her favorite thing was to trail right behind me, clutching the snacks I'd given her chest wherever I went. She went to her face was so small, and she was still so skinny it made her eyes look enormous. And bright, her arms and the backs of her hand were thick with tiny, pale white scars. She always kept her hair deliberately brushed over the left side of her face. Those big eyes never stopped looking around, nervously guarded and anxious at the very start. Even just a honk from a car could make her whole body flinch. The only time she seemed to relax, even a little, was when she was close to me. She was usually very quiet, always calm and silent, holding onto the little fox stuffed animal I had bought her for dear life. When I tried to play with her, she would just lift her head and look at me with those big, round, innocent eyes. Olivia was terrified of thunder. Thunder was like a nightmare. She could never escape. The moment she heard the first distant roll of thunder, she would immediately dart into my room, curling herself into a tight ball in the corner, her skinny arms wrapped around her knees that felt like bone, shaking uncontrollably. She barely made a sound as she cried, almost impossible to hear. I could not stand to watch her like that, just like I had said before. I was totally defenseless against it, so I sighed and called out to her, Olivia, come here, get into bed. She would slowly climb onto the mattress, pressing herself against the farthest edge, leaving a space between us as wide as the Mariana Trench. I could not help but roll my eyes. Olivia, move over a little. How are you supposed to sleep like that? She would shuffle toward me bit by bit until her small hands rested gently on my abdomen. Her clear eyes mirrored my reflection back at me, but the corners of her eyes were red and swollen and still showed streaks from tears that had just dried. As I let out a yawn, I wrapped her cold little hands and feet inside my own palms. All right, do not cry anymore. I am here. I will look after you. Things will get better from now on. A few minutes later, I suddenly felt something damp brush against my cheek. What are you doing? I asked. Grossed out, Olivia whispered timidly, my old dog, Buddy. When he wanted to be close to me, he would lick my face. Buddy. She gave a soft MHM in reply, but her voice gradually faded. My little yellow dog. I always looked after him, and then one day he was gone. What happened to him? Did he just run off? They chopped him up. Mom took half, and Dad took the other half. At night, while they were sleeping, I would sneak out and collect all of his bones. I made a small grave and buried him there. I made lots of little graves like that for the frogs, the butterflies, and the spiders I found on the sidewalk. They had all stopped moving. Adults always say that the dead should be put in the ground. I wanted them to sleep peacefully. I thought, maybe one day when I stop moving, someone nice will find me and bury me too, the same way I buried those little creatures. Her eyes were frighteningly clear, bright, and shining, yet the words coming out of her mouth were so heavy. Her tone was so casual, like she was just chatting about nothing. I had no idea what to say back to her. I just let out a long, heavy sigh and started humming a lullaby under my breath. She blinked a few times and finally got sleepy and drifted off, but the tears at the corners of her eyes kept trickling out. Even as she slept, Olivia slept like a newborn animal. Even in her sleep, she would keep one of my fingers clamped in her hand like it was her only safety rope. Well, so much for sleeping well tonight. It was my big mouth that got me into this mess. I just had to keep prying, and now look. I had gone and made myself feel terrible. I was not even the least bit tired anymore. The pity and concern I felt for Olivia only made me try even harder to look after her. Whenever I saw snacks or stuffed animals that caught my eye, I would buy them and give them to her. I was never great at comforting anyone. My usual way of dealing with her being upset was either a bunch of junk food or an occasional hug, so she could rest a little easier when we were home. Olivia loved to look at me with those big, curious eyes staring at me without ever blinking, doing nothing else. Just watching, I could not figure out all what on earth was so interesting about me. Every time I reached out to poke her cheek, her cheeks had finally started to get a bit rounder. Sometimes she would even unconsciously stick her thumb in her mouth. She would grab onto my arm, hugging it tight against her like a plush doll. Even when I gave her an actual toy, she still would not let go. She would say in a soft, babyish little voice, "Hold me, do not leave." Right then, my whole heart melted into a puddle. All right, whatever you say." She hated wearing skirts because of all the little scars on her skin. She thought it made her look ugly. Maria and I took her to a dermatologist multiple times and got her medicated cream for her hands, but the marks in other places just had to fade on their own over time. What she was most afraid of was being unwanted, because in her world, being unwanted was pretty much the same as being thrown out. So little Olivia was unbelievably well behaved and way too obedient. She almost never cried or threw a tantrum, and she never got angry. She just loved to trail behind me with all her heart, her hair done up in two little braids bobbing left and right as she ran like a little penguin. When we crossed the street heading to school, she insisted on holding my hand. When other kids came over to speak with me, she would hide behind my back, clutching the edge of my clothes, and timidly peek out for Olivia. I truly gave it everything I had: money, energy, whatever I had. I gave it all what I did not have. I found a way to scrape together. I thought I had earned a right to call myself a good brother. She had plenty of good food to eat, and there was no shortage of snacks or toys. She ate well and slept soundly. She grew like a weed. The results were better than I had expected. Olivia slowly became a lot more outgoing. Her face got rounder too. She started to look like a little princess at school. She got along fine with her classmates. She was not as scared of everything anymore. Her grades skyrocketed, but in my eyes, she was still a silly little thing otherwise. Why would she still have that strange and annoying little habit early in the morning? The second I opened my eyes, my whole face would be covered in a layer of drool, and there would be sticky wetness on my hand. It disgusted me so much it gave me goosebumps. Olivia, you little dummy. You use my face like a mop every single day. What is wrong with you? I'm talking to you, Olivia. Do not sit on me. Are you trying to crack my ribs? Hey, quit licking me. After I finally managed to peel her off of me, she would sit up straight on the wooden chair, her eyes filled with tears, and the look she gave me made me feel like I had just left her heartbroken. Olivia, why are you staring at me? I asked as I stood up to get my coat. Her dark eyes darted back and forth. She held back for ages, then finally spoke with a sob. Lucas, the kids at school said I am your girlfriend. That is ridiculous. What do those kids know? They just like to run their mouths. I looked at her. Do you really think I'm like that? She nervously twisted her fingers, keeping her head down, but glancing up at me from the corners of her eyes. Lucas, are you? Or are not you? Am I what? Of course not. Do not dwell on this nonsense. Just remember, you are your own person. You do not belong to anyone, got it? I understand, Lucas. I walked over, planning to reach out and mess up her hair, but Olivia flinched out of habit and threw her hands up to protect her head. Only after realizing it was just me did she awkwardly straighten up again. So I changed course and just patted her shoulder. Tomorrow I'll have Maria talk to your teacher. Those brats gossiping are way out of line. With all that free time, they should just focus on their homework. Let them go run laps with the track team instead of picking on a young girl like that. Olivia did not say anything else. She just gave me a goofy smile, and little dimples popped out on her cheeks, and let out a little hum. I had to admit, it was actually pretty adorable. Once we hit middle school, it was like Olivia's brain suddenly got turned on all the way. All her earlier silly childishness was completely gone. She was actually a year older than I was, but because she had enrolled late by the time we reached high school, we were in the same grade. I did not go to some fancy private high school with my mediocre grades. I got into a decent public school. Meanwhile, Olivia, with her stellar entrance exam scores, went straight to the best magnet high school in the city. Just comparing the two of us made me feel like a background character in a video game. By the time we were in high school, she really started to blossom. Her face, still with some baby fat, was already showing the hints of the striking beauty she would become, and she had gotten much calmer and more composed. Many times it is true what they say about girls changing so much as they grow up. The little girl who used to clutch her stuffed animal and follow me around like a little shadow had now grown into a gentle-natured and put-together young woman. I just threw my hands up and accepted it. All right, the kid is all grown up now. But Olivia was still terrified of thunder. Just like before, it was her one fatal weakness. No matter how old she got, she could never shake this problem. Because of that, I never even considered having her live in the dorms. Her bedroom was right across from mine. We usually kept our doors unlocked just in case thunder struck in the middle of the night, so she could come running over right away. The problem was she would often creep in when I was half awake on nights with no thunder. She would say she was scared of the dark. When it stormed, she would change her story to being scared of the thunder. Every time I tried to send her back to her own room, her eyes would instantly get teary, and she would beg me not to throw her out, swearing over and over that she would be good and sleep quietly. And I have always been a soft touch. I could never actually bring myself to kick her out. The end result was I would often wake up in the dead of night to a whole warm, soft body, pillow-sized person who smelled faintly of floral body wash. Honestly, it did smell nice. The problem was that it smelled a little too good, and then I would feel something nuzzling against my face, leaving me wet and itchy and making my face muscles spasm. Eventually, it got so bad that even when I was groggy, I would automatically shout at her, Olivia, what are you doing? Are you going to go to sleep already? Ah. She would jump in surprise first and then go quiet for a long moment before timidly whispering back, I'm going to sleep. Her voice, so quiet it was barely a whisper, but at least those fidgety little motions would settle down for a bit. This happened over and over again, and it made me think she was purposely pushing my buttons. I finally had enough and started locking my bedroom door at night. But the very next night, Olivia came and hammered on the door, crying about how scared she was of the dark, loud enough to make it sound like I was committing a crime in there. After all these years, she had already figured me out. Completely knowing I would never actually get rough with her, the worst I would do was give her a light tap on the hand. Now that she was older, that level of punishment did not even faze her anymore. The moment I cracked the door open, even a tiny bit of her fake tears would dry up instantly, and like a running back on a football team, she would dart straight into my room. There was no stopping her. I would resist and struggle and yell and get mad, and even stoop to begging her to leave. But to Olivia, who knew every single one of my weaknesses, this was all just part of her game. She was basically an expert at reading the room one glance at my expression, and she knew exactly how to play it and started making random promises she never intended to keep. I was totally out of my league with her. She made my head spin, but that was not enough for her. She also insisted that I be a good sport about it. You take up my bed, steal my pillow, and make me sing you lullabies, and now you expect me to be an A. Good mood. That would be ideal, of course. Go away, Olivia. The elite high school she went to was right next door to my ordinary public school. Both were not far from our house, about a mile on foot. She finished school half an hour after I did, so I would wait for her at my school gate every day. I had to wait. If I went home ahead of her, she would start howling like a banshee that evening. It would give me a splitting headache. Usually her voice was clear and nice to listen to, like a little bird, but the second she started whining, she transformed into a screeching monster, and the girl had incredible lung capacity. Her destructive power was absolutely terrifying in public. She was like a completely different person than at home. She always seemed a bit cold and distant from far away. She had a real commanding presence. I had heard that guys were lined up to date her, but she turned every last one of them down. A few persistent ones would sneak letters into her school bag one day. When school let out, she pulled an envelope out of her bag without realizing what it was. That pink envelope was an eyesore. We just stood there looking at each other. Neither of us said a word. We both went stiff at the same second with identical looks of shock on our faces. I was shocked because she was not even trying to hide this kind of thing from me anymore. She was getting way too brave. They say an older brother is like a father. Even though I was not actually her brother or family, after all this time living together, I was still like a father figure to her. And now my little girl that I had worked so hard to raise was going to get taken away by some random kid, of course. I felt like my heart was being ripped out. My little girl might actually get stolen from me. Any real dad in that situation. Wow. Do you have a good cry over it? Wait, hold on. I can explain. She was fast and slapped her hand over my mouth, jumping in to defend herself. Before I could speak, some freak shoved it in my backpack. I did not take it. Did not get any ideas. I pulled her hand away from my mouth. All right. I believe you. I believe you. Now let me see what it says. Do not even think about it. Lucas Miller. The letter is not for you. Why would I show you? I puffed out my cheeks and put on a grumpy face. How dare you talk to your father that way? Can we just pretend it is for me? I've never gotten one of these before. Just let me live vicariously through you. Come on. Let me see it. Or you're not getting any dinner tonight. She put her hands on her hips and raised her chin with a look that said, I am not afraid of you. Get out of here. Since were you my father? You always have to put your 2 cents in. Pretend it is for you. You have some nerve, Lucas. You are so dramatic. And by the way, if you try to starve me, I will scream all night until you lose your mind. And with that, she neatly ripped the letter into tiny pieces and threw them into the garbage can next to her. I shook my head in an exaggerated way. A perfectly good love letter. What a shame. Shame on you. You are the one who should be ashamed. I kept shaking my head, sighing, and pretending to be deep, and did not say another thing to her. She really was a girl with a sharp tongue. The second I finished speaking, she pulled her famous move on my arm, a hard twist, and a nasty pinch. It hurt so much I almost screamed. You just tease me all the time. What about you? What have you got to brag about? Has anyone asked you out? Has anyone? I waved my hand, trying to look enigmatic. Well, that is not something I can share. So that means no, does it? She smiled smugly and pinched me one more time. All right, you are right, no one. Quit pinching. She had a small, triumphant smile on her lips. That is better. With your lousy grades, if you do not get it together, the only university you will get into will be Couch Tech, majoring in doing nothing. I rubbed the brand new red welts on my arm, feeling absolutely miserable inside. Fine, then I will not go to college. I have some money saved up anyway. If I do not get married or have children, I can get by for the rest of my life. What about me? You? I shot her a disgusted glare, feeling even worse. You plan on just living off me forever? Here we go again. She squealed and gave me another hard pinch. How many times are you going to call me your daughter? I think you were just asking for it. All right, I am sorry. Please have some mercy. At dinner, I lay slumped over the table, looking completely dead inside, staring at the purple and blue mark on my arm. Meanwhile, the guilty party herself was eating her food with great enthusiasm, enjoying every bite. I felt so sad. Olivia got more beautiful every single day. Bright eyes, white teeth, skin so flawless it looked airbrushed. Her features became more refined. Yet she would speak with her mouth full, and at the same time reach over and grab the shrimp I had just peeled off my plate. I tried to complain and got another ruthless pinch in return. I gave in right away, resigned myself to my fate, and kept quiet. The sweet, obedient, and soft little Olivia from before was nowhere to be found. In her place was a little terror version of Olivia, who ruled the house with her iron grip, pinching moves. Some people are alive, but their hearts have already been strangled by life, crushed by unfairness to the point they cannot breathe. I was probably one of those people. My grades had always been a disaster by my senior year. They had completely fallen apart. There were 1,000 kids in my grade, and I was comfortably stuck around 700 place. The numbers from previous years were clear. If I wanted to get into a decent state school with my grades, I would need to make it into at least the top 600. I really did try, and I honestly tried to listen in class, but the second the teacher opened their mouth, I would immediately go in a shutdown mode. Especially in math, the speed the teacher wrote on the board could not keep up with how fast my eyes were closing. Olivia and I were complete opposites. Her grades were insanely good. One whole wall in the living room was nearly covered from top to bottom with her awards. She was consistently in the top 10 of the entire grade, which was as easy for her as eating breakfast, but fate was not fair to her at all. In 10th grade, she entered the national physics competition and got 51st place. Nationwide, the rule was only the top 50 got automatic admission and a guaranteed spot at an elite university. She missed it by a single spot. She was upset and cried about it for a long time. I secretly laughed about it for a while until she caught me red-handed, and then she pinched me until I gave up right then and there. In 11th grade, she was still mad about it and gritted her teeth to try again, and the result was another 51st place finish, still no automatic admission. She was absolutely devastated this time. I learned my lesson and did not even dare to smile, but I still got a brutal pinch. Her excuse was, "I am already upset, and looking at you makes it worse." I just held my head and wondered what I had done to deserve this. But even without that competition-based admissions offer with Olivia's regular grades, she could easily get into any university she wanted with her academic record. Getting into that elite Redwood University was not even a challenge. All kinds of competitions were just convenient shortcuts she could take. She usually looked like she barely studied yet. Her math skills were ridiculously, almost frighteningly good. She hardly ever studied vocabulary, and she could remember English words after seeing them just once. She did not seem to put much work into chemistry either. If she actually needed to work out an equation, she could figure it out step by step. Olivia was honestly just too smart once she had taken care of her own applications and studying. She launched a full-scale tutoring plan on me. Every night, she would pull me aside and go through all 6 of my subjects one after another. Even with one AP course that was in a different subject area, she would just skim through the textbook for a couple of days, look up a few things online, and then simply figure it all out on her own. The difference in IQ between people could really be as wide as from the foot of Mount Everest to its very peak. I was down at the bottom, looking up, watching helplessly as the genius named Olivia flew high above in the clouds. Her natural ability was honestly frightening. Those questions that made my head spin the second I saw them. When she looked at them, she could take them apart in no time. Not only did she make it look easy, she would have plenty of energy left to assign me a mountain of extra work the second I said, "I do not want to do it." A ruler would smack my palm. Eventually, she just bought a 3-foot-long wooden stick. If I even thought about slacking, I would get a taste of her tough love. Starting that day, I magically turned into a model student who loved doing assignments. Under her nonstop tutoring hurricane, I became several times more obedient. So obedient, I felt like a little kid. Meanwhile, her temper got worse and worse. Sometimes she would just stand there staring at me with this "I cannot believe this" looked like she was trying to figure out how a person's brain could possibly ask such a dumb question on her otherwise perfect academic record. I was probably the only one she considered a failure as a student. Somehow or another, Olivia actually pulled my terrible grades up and up from barely being able to get into a state school. My ranking went from the 600s, slowly creeping up to 500, then 400. Then 300 until the final round of SATs. My score was actually good enough to land me at 99th in the entire grade. I ended up with a 1450, which was just enough for a decent public university. Right then, I finally felt like I could finally catch my breath. All of this was all thanks to General Olivia. She was the real MVP of this operation. I was just a lazy passenger. She dragged along Olivia. S grades were absurdly, impossibly good, a 1583rd in the entire state. Even before the official scores came out, Redwood University's admissions office called to try and get her. They had already talked about her major with her. As for my own college plans, she filled everything out for me. I did not know anything about picking majors or schools. I had no idea what I was doing. So I left everything up to her during those 2 months of summer after graduation. She worked as a private tutor, and I worked at a fried chicken joint. One night, she came by to get some food. We made eye contact across the counter, and we both laughed when the manager was not watching. I upgraded her $1.99 chicken meal on the sly to a ridiculously loaded premium platter and stuffed an absurd amount of extra chicken into the box. We ate until we were both completely full. She took what was left back with her. So to sum it up, no shame, but a lot of fun that summer. I opened a separate bank account for her and put around $20,000 into it. That money came from the scholarship she had gotten, the contest winnings I had secretly put aside for her, and the allowance I had given her over the years. At first, she absolutely refused to accept it. I had to put on my stern teacher face and scolded her for a while before she finally gave in. After all, Olivia was grown up. Now she needed to start living her own life. So I deliberately started putting some space between the two of us. She could sense that something was different, but she did not say anything about it. Time passed in a flash before I knew it. The first day of school had arrived. I drove her to the entrance of Redwood University. I talked nonstop during the whole ride, nagging her about everything, worried she would not eat enough, worried she would not stay warm enough, worried she would not get enough sleep. Basically, I found something to worry about with everything, but eventually we had to say goodbye. Olivia kept her head down and did not say anything. Just when I was about to turn and walk away, she suddenly latched onto my arm like she had put all her courage into that single moment. Lucas, can we rent a place off campus? I did not want to live in the dorm. If I live in the dorm, I will not see you. We cannot be together every day. I acted casual and made a joke to change the subject. Oh, please, you are a big girl now. If we keep going like this, are you going to want me to move in with you after you get married too? I gently but firmly pried her hand off my sleeve. All right, just text me if you need anything. My lousy school is not far from here anyway. What are you so scared of? I patted her head like I was trying to calm her down. She started to say something as if she had something on her mind, but I spoke before she could. I am going now. See you around. I waved and turned to walk away, but she stood there frozen like she was stuck in place. Once I got into the rideshare car, I glanced back. She was still standing exactly where I'd left her long hair hanging down around her face, looking as sad and lonely as a kid left on the curb. It was not until I saw a student volunteer in a red vest walk over to help her with her bags that I finally let out a slow sigh of relief. I told the driver my address, and the car slowly pulled away from the campus. A little later that same day, after I had unpacked my things in my own dorm room, I collapsed back on my bed and just lay there. My phone screen kept flashing over, and over all of them were texts from Olivia. The 99 plus alert on the screen glowed an irritating red. I stared at it for good while. Then I just typed 4 words and hit send. Yeah, good night. Right after, my phone buzzed again. She had answered back right away, but I did not bother to check it. I just threw my phone to the side, closed my eyes, and tried to force myself to fall asleep. My chest felt heavy like there was a weight on it, and it was hard to breathe. My mind was a jumbled mess, thoughts going in circles, until all I could do was let out one long sigh. That night, I tossed and turned until very late before I finally fell asleep, and even when I was asleep, I kept rolling around, tormented by a series of broken dreams. Those pieces slowly came together into an image I still cannot forget. In the dream, I saw my mom first, and then my dad. They were at home screaming at each other, pointing fingers and yelling insults, blaming one another for their own cheating. After they split up, I was caught right in the middle. Like a burden, neither one of them wanted all they wanted was to pass me off to the other. That loveless marriage of convenience did not result in some precious love child. It only produced a kid who existed to carry on their feud. The court gave custody to my dad in the end. But starting the day my stepmother arrived, she was ruthless with me. "You pathetic, unwanted little stray. You should have been drowned in the toilet right after you were born," she said, her voice like ice. "No, then I would have to clean up after. Just go find a rope and do it yourself. It would be better for all of us." Back then, I still had some foolish hope. I thought if I just kept my mouth shut and took it that one day my dad would finally notice me. I waited for 2 full years, and all I got was a new baby brother along with even more blatant neglect than before I tried reaching out to my mom. But she already had a new family of her own. She was cradling a perfect little baby boy. The smile on her face was cloyingly sweet, exactly like the smile my dad had when he looked at his new kid. That kind of smile was never for me. As soon as my mom saw me, her face scrunched up, and she warned me not to upset the little angel she was holding. I just nodded blankly, feeling like nothing but a rat crawling out of the gutter, pathetic and greedy, trying to get a little bit of warmth from the happiness spilling over from someone else's life. "Lucas, I'm sorry," she said, but her voice was cold as ice. "You were a mistake. I cannot give you any maternal affection. You are not the child I wanted. You have seen what you came to see. Go home. I will send the support payments every month. You go back to your dad. Do not come around and bother my new family anymore." I walked home in a fog that night. I came down with a high fever and stayed sick for a full day and night. I was so sick I almost died. Only then did they finally take me to the hospital, probably scared that it would be a mess if I actually died on them. I stayed in the hospital for 3 days. Not one person visited me, no one at all. I was the one who did not matter in that white room that reeked of rubbing alcohol. Something inside my head just snapped right then. It all became clear to me. If that was how things were going to be, then I would just take the money. There are always people out there who care more about their image than their own life, who are terrified of their secrets getting out, especially the rich ones. Their reputation is sometimes worth more than a person's life. So I started causing trouble. I raised as much hell as I could. I made a mess without caring what happened and kept at it until they had no choice but to compromise. In the end, I got exactly what I wanted, $3 million and a downtown apartment. After that, I was set for food and housing going forward. The cost was that I had to pretend I did not have a family anymore from that day forward. We would be complete strangers in each other's lives. I used that money to cover my tuition and living expenses, and I hired Maria, who was so kind and dependable. I found her through a housekeeping agency. Then fate took its twists and turns, and I ended up finding Olivia and raising her. When I first laid eyes on her, what came over me was not just ordinary compassion. There was also a strange feeling of recognition in her eyes. I saw the little boy I used to be, and taking care of her. Was not I also trying to help that lost little boy as well? The only real difference was that I had been a little luckier. At least I had something to bargain with and force them to give me some cash to build myself a decent starting point. But now that she had grown up and become more and more impressive, it only made me feel even more dull, average, and completely unexceptional. I knew exactly what I was worth, a rat forever stuck spinning in the dirty sewer pipes. All I could see was filth and drainage ditches, but a fox could run across an open meadow free and beautiful. The real world is not a fairy tale. The higher she rose, someone like me would look more and more like a dead weight, holding her back. All those stories about people leaving once they get rich or famous were everywhere, like dime store novels. You could find them anywhere. This kind of bet I could not afford to take that risk. I did not want to end up as the pathetic one in that story, with my future completely in someone else's control. The world was huge, and I wanted to see it for myself too. So this whole thing about love was safer to just forget. I could not even explain what love was, so how could I promise anyone a lifetime of it? In that blurred dream, I saw Maria once more. Her life had not been easy. Either she was a single mom from a tiny town in the middle of nowhere, who had raised her daughter by herself. It had taken everything out of her. She moved to the city on her own to work as a maid, saving up bit by bit, hoping to leave something for her daughter as future eventually. Her daughter also made a life in the city, got married, and had a baby of her own. Maria had been ready to stop working and give up her job as a housekeeper to move back and help raise her grandson, but she could not bring herself to leave us, so she just went back and forth between both families. and stayed with us until we finished high school. Whenever she had a moment, she loved to pull out her phone and proudly show me photos of her grandkids smiling so hard that all her wrinkles softened like a peacock showing off its feathers. Look, people like us from the country, we do not have much money, but we can still be happy. She would always tell me that once you get to be 50 or 60 years old, what you really want in your heart is to have your grandkids running around you. No matter how hard things were out in the world, the moment you walk through the door and a little kid calls you grandma or grandpa, then it was all worth it. That is something you cannot buy with any amount of money. I left a large check for her grandson as a fund for his future college education. She refused to accept it at first, but I made her take it. She took my hand and smiled so wide her eyes disappeared. Lucas, you're a good boy. You have such a good heart. And that young lady, Olivia, she is a wonderful girl. The two of you, you're just like in a storybook. You grew up together, so you have a real connection. When I first saw her way back, when oh my, she was dirty and smelly, like a little lump of coal. But you did not mind at all, and you brought her home with you. All these years, I have seen everything. You two are a perfect match. I just took it as a joke and laughed it off, but the more I tried to deny it, the more serious she got. She kept saying it again and again in the hopes that one day I would find a happy ending of my own. By that point in the dream, I did not even notice when the tears started falling on their own and soaked a big spot on my pillow. By the time it eventually dried, a pillow could be dried out, but could tears that had already fallen ever go back where they came from, just like time that had already gone by once it left? It would never return. Those memories were like a trail of scattered stars on the horizon. When they flashed through my mind, they were like meteors flying away with glowing tails. Once they all vanished into the darkness, you finally realized that you had quietly grown older. Once you were grown, only then did you understand that all those fairy tales were just made up. The beautiful girl would not marry the beast if he was broke, and the prince on his high horse would never marry a girl who had absolutely nothing. None of that was real. I started to consciously pull away from Olivia at first. She told me about everything: waking up, going to lectures, getting out of school, what she ate, where she went. But when I responded to her with shorter and shorter answers, just 1 or 2 characters, and took forever to write back, she slowly started to get the message. Her texts became less and less frequent until one Friday evening, she sent a goofy meme first and then asked, a little unsure, "Lucas, are you seeing someone?" I looked at those words on the screen, made up my mind, and decided to just cut things off cleanly. It was better than letting it drag on painfully, so I would just rip the Band-Aid off. Yeah, it is pretty serious. I typed that out and sent it to her. A long time passed before she wrote back again. With who are you going out with? That is right. I found someone I really care about. That time she went quiet for almost a week and did not say a thing. The following Saturday, she suddenly texted me out of the blue and asked to see me. I was going to say no, but she kept pushing and said it would be a way to say goodbye to the past. I got what she was saying. Letting things drag on was bad for both of us. So I said yes. We met at a living room of a secluded lake house to say our goodbyes. She said it belonged to a friend from university, and they had let her borrow it for the evening. That day, she was dressed in a white shirt and a long skirt. Her makeup was perfectly done. She had a tiny flower tucked in her hair on one side. She looked calm and lovely. She had cooked a whole table full of dishes. They all looked and smelled amazing, as lavish as a holiday dinner. But I did not have any appetite. Olivia kept her eyes fixed on me with a big, almost aggressive smile on her face. It made me really nervous. I had a feeling that she was planning something big. She poured me a glass of wine. I did not dare even take a sip, scared that she might have put something in it. In the middle of dinner, Olivia pulled a little red box out of her bag. Her eyes were looking a bit red. "Lucas, I'm so happy for you. You found someone you care about. I have also decided to say yes to someone. I'm going to put on the ring he gave me." She opened the lid, and inside were 2 silver rings. I stayed quiet for a long time. My throat was so tight, I could not get any words out. That is good. Really? Is that right? Her voice suddenly got sharp, and her eyes were glued to my face like she was trying to find something in my expression. I could not look her in the eye, so I just looked down at my plate like a stray dog that had been left behind. "Yeah, good for you. Well, Lucas, thank you for looking after me all this time. It is too bad our roads are going different places now." She lifted her glass in my direction. I had no choice but to brace myself and touch my glass to hers, and took a small Symbolic sip. She was acting like she was completely heartbroken. Then she just stood up and walked over to the big, heavy entrance door. She stood facing away from me with her head lowered and her shoulders trembling, as if she was quietly crying. Her sniffling got louder and turned into full-on sobbing. I just stayed in my seat, unable to say anything, staring at the table in a daze. A few more minutes passed, and I felt a strange heat begin to burn in my stomach, and everything in front of me began to blur and sway. Olivia seemed to split into two right before my eyes. Everything was a blurry double image. It is so hot. What did you put in my drink? I tried to push myself up, but my legs were weak, and I almost collapsed. I just barely caught the table and stood there breathing hard. She whipped around, her eyes were red, and she looked genuinely shocked, but she got herself together fast and slowly came over to me. What is the matter? I do not know either. Her voice was getting more frantic, and there was a shake in it like she might start crying. She leaned her whole body against my arm, her soft frame pressing close to me, and she felt so warm it made my head spin. I swallowed and tried to push her off, but my arms and legs were as heavy as lead. The wine. There is something wrong with this wine. Oh my God, my friend gave me that wine. I had no idea this would happen. What are we going to do now? Her hands clamped onto my arm like vices and would not let go. Lucas, are you all right? She leaned in and asked softly by my ear, her warm breath grazing my earlobe. I felt like I was about to burn up, like I could explode at any second. Olivia, go check the living room. See if there is anything like an antidote. She finally let go of me quickly and started rummaging through the cabinets. I did not even have time to relax when I heard a heavy thump. She tossed a small black thing onto the floor. Without even looking, it looked like a flashlight, then a second, and a third one followed. I almost could not keep it together. What are those? Did you buy them in bulk? She did not even look up and just said calmly, stun guns. I was already feeling terrible, and now my heart dropped. I said cautiously, Olivia, why don't you go look in the kitchen? She did not answer and just quietly walked into the kitchen. The second she was out of view, I gritted my teeth and started pulling myself along the wall, making my way toward the front door. As fast as I could, I finally made it to the entrance, grabbed the handle, and turned it with all my strength. It did not move at all. Of course, it was like that. My heart sank completely. I slumped back against the heavy door and slid down to the ground, completely defeated. Olivia was already back in the living room, just a few feet away, one hand over her mouth and the other gripping one of the stun guns. She looked at me with those ridiculously innocent big eyes. Is the door stuck again? This stupid door is always getting jammed. I asked my friend to fix it ages ago, but she's so lazy. So what do we do now, Lucas? Are we trapped in here? I obviously knew what she was up to, and I knew it was no use playing dumb, so I stopped fighting it and did not even try to plead to make things easier on myself. I just had to tell her the truth. Olivia, I am sorry. I do not have a girlfriend. I made all of that up. It is because I have always been a total loser. I only study when someone makes me, but I'm always first in line for a meal. I am so lazy, it is pathetic, and I am almost 20. I have never done anything worthwhile. Every day, I just go through the motions. I just think I am so pathetic. I do not think I am good enough for you. I am sorry. I was always too afraid to acknowledge how you felt. I'm a complete coward. All these words came pouring out of me. My chest was burning and also felt like it was full of ice hot and aching. She hesitated for a second, then walked over to me slowly and crouched down in front of me and wrapped her arms tightly around me, her voice trembling. How can you talk about yourself that way, Lucas? Whether you are poor or rich, whether you are smart or not so smart, whether you are brave or timid, in my eyes, you are completely unique. You are just you. You do not need to prove anything to anybody, and no one has the right to demand that you prove yourself. All those famous people, the rich and powerful, the so-called big shots, they all look the same to me. All those supposedly successful people, they are just other people to me. They have nothing to do with me. But you are different, Lucas. You are nothing like them. In my heart, you have always been my everything. The one I have always loved, the one I have always wanted to be near, the one I have always wanted to call mine. I could not say anything for a long moment, and just stood there in a daze as she licked away the reflexive tears from the corners of my eyes. Right when I was about to say something, a jolt of electricity suddenly shot through me, and went right to my brain. It hurt so much I almost started flopping around on the floor. Damn it. Olivia, your stupid stun gun is still on. I'm going to die from this shock. So in the end, Olivia and I got together after all. The first thing she did was to take my phone away and get the passwords to everything then. Like she was grilling a suspect, she went through every single one of my messages. Once she confirmed the so-called new girlfriend had been made up by me from beginning to end, she lectured me for 3 days straight and nearly starved me. Once we had both cooled off and gotten back together, she finally admitted that it had never crossed her mind that my reason for turning her down would be so dumb. It was just low self-esteem. She said I was unique, but not in a good way, but uniquely stupid. The day after we got together, we started looking for a place and sign a lease and move in the next day. By day 5, she was already asking me to buy her promise rings, all while pretending to be completely casual about it, saying things like, "It does not matter, I'm just testing you." But actually, her hands were shaking from how nervous she was. She made sure to hold her fingers out wide so I could put the ring on easily. As for those silver rings back at the lake house, I found out later that they were just props she had borrowed from a friend. The jewelry store belonged to one of her classmates' families, and those rings were part of her master plan to catch me. The time we spent together after that was actually simple and happy. We rarely argued, even when we had our disagreements. We would get over them fast. Neither of us wanted to actually hurt the other person. Everything was wonderful except that my back took a real beating every night. She would toss her hair and command me in all seriousness, "All right, back to the bedroom." Over time, I honestly started to suspect that she was going to be the early death of me. In our 3rd year together, which was our junior year of university, she suddenly decided to take a gap year and start her own company. I was worried she would not be able to do it by herself, so I went ahead and took a leave of absence to go through the chaos with her, and it was really difficult. So hard we woke up before sunrise every single day looking at retail spaces, negotiating leases, furnishing the office, chasing down investors, recruiting employees, handing out flyers, meeting with clients. I did not know the first thing about business. I had no talent for it at all. The only thing I could do was to be a grunt worker for her. We worked until late every single night and ended up holding each other up as we collapsed onto the spare mattress we kept in the corner of the office, so she could at least rest for a bit. She loved to curl up on her side next to me and put her head on my stomach. I was not exactly overweight, but I had a little bit of a gut, which made for a perfect pillow as far as she was concerned. But even when she was sleeping, she would not stay still and would sometimes let out little whimpers like a tired little animal. The moment I reached out and stroked her hair, she would lean into my hand. Even in her sleep, we fought through it like that for 6 months before things finally began to improve. Over that period, I poured all of my savings, that $3 million I had, straight into her business. That was everything I had to fall back on every Tim. Yeah, I remembered that my heart would hurt a little, but then Olivia would lean down and kiss me a couple times, and the pain would disappear without a trace. As long as she was happy, that was all that mattered. Who cared about having a lot of money? Anyway, it was just numbers on a screen, just pieces of paper. You could not take it with you when you went. If I hoarded it all like some kind of miser and was too scared to use it, then what was the point of being alive as long as we could get by with food, to eat, a place to sleep, and some of the love that was really enough the first 6 months? We were just building the groundwork, getting all the operations and processes sorted out step by step. The next 6 months, the business suddenly exploded. Our profits went from tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands, then millions by the second year. We had hit 8 figures. Olivia was still in university, and she was already a real multi-millionaire, and I naturally became the rich girl-esque boyfriend. She tried to give me half of the company. Once I said no, of course I just wanted to get back what I had put in for the proposal and the wedding. I wanted to use my own savings, using her money to propose. Just felt strange to me. She went on and on about this. I got an earful from her about it. Honestly, I still do not fully understand the way her mind worked. Grandpa, what happened after that? I was leaning back in a soft lounge chair, completely lost in the memory as well. After that, after we finished university, I asked her to marry me. Not long after that, we met and got married. I will never forget the moment I slipped the ring onto her finger. Olivia suddenly burst out crying, just like a little kid. This girl who was so tough and stubborn through everything, who had been through so much pain as a little girl, had never once cried. During that year of building the company, when we were working ourselves to the bone, she had not shed a single tear then either. But in this moment, that was completely and totally her own She finally let herself cry her heart out, all of the hurt, the loneliness, the struggle, the pain in that one good cry. It all finally came to an end. That was the last sad tear she ever shed. And the first one that was truly for happiness. I did not cry. Of course, that would have been so embarrassing. I just got a little something in my eye time, did not stand still. It kept pushing ahead. Eventually, we got a house of our own, and the walls were covered in our wedding pictures, our kids. The best thing we ever made together. We grew up day after day, and we got older right along with them. Our backs stooped, and our steps slowed down. Time wore down a lot of things, but what it never wore away was the love we had for each other, even the very end. When she was lying in that hospital bed, her hands still clung to me, like she was holding on for dear life, scared to let me out of her sight for even a moment in my eyes. She would always be that same little girl who followed me around, begging for treats and wanting to be held, even when her face was full of wrinkles, even when time had stolen the beauty of her youth, even when she was so old that she sounded like an infant and could barely form words. What did that matter? She still loved to curl up in my embrace while I closed my eyes and listen, not with my ears, but with my heart, to the love buried in her broken whispers that was so deep it had no end. And like that, in the gentle light of the sun, we held hands with our fingers laced together. With a quiet smile, almost perfectly content, she quietly walked into the twilight nearby. I put on a stern face and said to my granddaughter somewhere deep in my memory, there is a wedding picture that will never fade away. It will always be there, shining bright. Sweetheart, do not let money or feeling like you are not good enough for me. Take my blessing and go find out how sweet love can really be. And one more thing, I added, be careful out there. Do not get taken in by some random guy with a fast car. Your grandmother always used to say that to me. Grandpa, you are so lame. This story is not about wealth or status. It is about two broken children who found each other in the dark and refused to let go. Lucas grew up being told he was unwanted, a mistake, a burden. Olivia was thrown away like garbage, left to dig through trash just to survive. But when they met, something quiet and powerful happened. They chose each other. Not because they had to, not because of obligation, but because they recognized something familiar in each other's eyes. That recognition became a home. Lucas spent years believing he was not good enough for her, that his ordinary life could never match her brilliant future. But Olivia never saw him as ordinary. To her, he was the moon, steady, constant, irreplaceable. The lesson here is simple but profound. Love is not about being good enough. It is about showing up day after day through thunderstorms and business failures and slow call time. It is about holding someone's hand when they're too scared to sleep alone and letting them hold yours when you're too proud to admit you're scared to. In the end, the greatest love stories are not written by fate. They're built by two people who refuse to walk away, even when walking away would be easier. And that is something no amount of money can buy.